Bioshock is a game which has never quite fit into any other category of games for me. It's horror, but you feel powerful enough for it to never really be overly frightening. It's got a 1920s to 1940s kind of vibe, but with a lot of futuristic steampunk technology integrated into it. From what I remember, it did what it did seamlessly, and then it went on to spawn a couple of sequels. The only other games I can think of which give off the same kind of feeling which Bioshock does are the spiritual predecessors of System Shock 1 and 2. Oh, and maybe Prey 2017. And while I enjoyed Bioshock Infinite when it came out, I don't think it ever felt as fun or as unique or as good as the first game did to me. I can't really place my finger on it, and it may just be rose-tinted nostalgia peeking through. But it always felt to me that if the first Bioshock is akin to something like Prey, then Bioshock Infinite is akin to something like Dishonored. And while I enjoyed Dishonored for what it was, it didn't scratch the same itch the way that Prey did, which is the same void that the original Bioshock filled. Ironically, Prey and Dishonored share the same developer who also worked on Bioshock 2. But either way. It's been 13 years since Bioshock was first released into the world, and 6 years since the series has breathed anything new into existence. So I figure that now's as good a time as any to try and see if Bioshock was as good as I remember. Before I jump in, there's a small issue of the remaster versus the original version, at least on Steam. The remaster came out 4 years ago and touted slightly better graphics, but at the expense of a lot of stability in the game. Plenty of reviews and searching around complain about corrupted saves, audio glitching, and consistent crashing on the remaster, so I'm gonna skip out on that and stick to the original. As you might well imagine, there are going to be tons of spoilers from the game, and if you have any notion of playing it for yourself, I highly recommend that you go do just that before watching this. So Bioshock begins with your plane crashing over the Atlantic Ocean in the year 1960. You survive the crash and find yourself floating in the wreckage with a giant moonlit tower not too far away. The building creaks to life as you enter it, with the words on the banner in front of you relaying a strong message: no gods or kings, only men. As you make your way further in, you discover your ticket further down into the sea, a bathysphere. As you plunge further and further into the depths of the Atlantic, you're greeted with a slideshow, a bit of propaganda played for the potential future residents of the underwater city of Rapture. The man whose voice echoes throughout the sphere is that of Andrew Ryan, the man who seems to be the mind behind this Atlantis-like city. He criticizes the US government for not compensating the hard work of poor Americans properly. He criticizes the Vatican for using its hardworking people in the name of God. And he criticizes Russia for distributing its people's hard work evenly across the board. Then he presents Rapture as the solution, as a place where a man can work hard for themselves and build up the city accordingly, where artists can create without censorship, where scientists can experiment freely and invent without restrictions. Many of these inventions seem to be plastered across Rapture's walls as little advertisements for something known as plasmids. They promote the idea of fire springing from your fingertips, of being able to control objects with your mind, touting the idea of human evolution with their use. Wow, sounds great. What could go wrong? Well, you discover almost immediately what could go wrong, as a man named Atlas sends a guy down to help you out from the bathysphere who promptly gets eviscerated by a psychotic woman with a scythe. As she gives up trying to pry you out of your tuna can, Atlas speaks to you over the radio at your side, asking if you would kindly pick up the radio and listen to his instructions to stay alive. Well, his instructions consist of, grab a crowbar or something, and I do the rest as a splicer awaits me and I promptly bash his brains in. The little signs leading me up the path indicate that a protest began at some point down here. Rapture's residents seem to have a strong resentment for the creator of the city, Andrew Ryan, as various slogans cry out against his control over them. Turns out that even someone promising complete freedom wants something from their people in the end. Well, as I ascend to the top of this area, one of those glowing red tinctures of evolutionary fluids awaits me, along with a syringe. I get no prompt from Atlas to do anything with it, so I choose to do something that anyone would do without any direction. I blast this gigantic needle straight into my wrist in the hopes that I get high as fuck. Well, I unfortunately don't take a cool drug trip and instead get lightning hands, putting the shock in Bioshock. I guess that's the second best outcome here. The initial surge of energy from chunking a murder hornet-sized needle into my arm causes me to freak the fuck out as Atlas assures me that nothing insidious is happening, only that my genetic code is being rewritten. Completely normal stuff. Well, I pass out in the best place possible, over this railing. A couple of splicers come by to try to harvest something from me that they refer to as Adam, before a Big Daddy comes by and scares them off. Big Daddies are those gigantic drill-clad diving suits of nautical terror pictured on the box art of the game. These giant, voiceless monsters tend to be led around by these small, undead-looking little girls called Little Sisters. The one who stumbles upon my half-conscious body refers to me as an angel and decides to leave me be. The start of this game is really well done in my eyes, as it plunges you into the ocean and throws all of these new ideas at you, but not in a confusing way. Sure, there's a lot of mystery as to what all of these somewhat human creatures are, and how Rapture ended up this way, but it isn't overly complicated by any means. So moving on to the next section has this chunk of plane smash into the airlock tube, which... Alright, so I know we're in fucking Atlantis, and I just punched a hole in my arm and gave it the electric slide, but I'm almost certain the pressure from the water forcing its way into the tube would kill me one way or another. Oh well. On a more pressing note, this game has some extraordinarily dark corners. I get that it's supposed to add a certain intensity to these freakish splicers jumping out at me, but I found it more tedious than anything else. It's only worsened by the fact that stuff like these Vita chambers are incredibly bright and make the contrast more extreme. Vita chambers are your checkpoints. If you die, you respawn there, so seeing one in a more intense area of the map is a relief a lot of the time. They remind me of the save crystals in Legend of Grimrock in that regard, even though that game came out later than Bioshock. Fantastic game, by the way. As you make your way further into the belly of Rapture, Atlas pleads to you, imploring you to help find his wife and child who are trapped further in. He also explains to you why the splicers are the way that they are, elaborating on the fact that plasmids basically drove people insane. As it modified their bodies, it also altered their brains and thinking.
I got working folk coming in from Port Neptune trying to catch a little diversion, and all they can think about is the stink coming out of your shitter.
Progressing further reveals that something sinister happened on New Year's of 1959, at least 1 year ago. Not only are there signs of a broken up party all over the place, but a handful of tapes play back some of the events just before the thing which damned Rapture occurred. In addition to this, you occasionally get some sort of ghostly visions of random Rapture citizens experiencing negative effects of splicing their DNA with Eve, the evolutionary concoction which you've been using to fuel your big Sith energy. Anyways, this shit starts to pick up in pace as Atlas asks you to kindly lower your weapon when you stumble across a little sister. The cutscene that plays out is awesome and brutal, as it shows the harvesting process which Little Sisters perform. They've apparently been modified by scientists to be the little monsters that they are, and they use their syringes to stab the corpses of splicers, gathering the latent evolutionary energy from their bodies as pure Adam. This stuff is what fuels the plasmids which grant superhuman powers to its host, and every splicer knows it and wants it. The scene that unfolds showcases not only the primal desire to claim this tasty tonic as a splicer comes in and just sucker punches the child into the ground, but also the protective capabilities which Big Daddies were designed to exhibit when said child comes under threat. These capabilities include falcon punching enemies into a wall and making their drills go brrr. Awesome. At any rate, I carry on through this fancy-looking hotel-type area, taking out splicers and the like. This game really loads you up on first aid at the beginning, so much so that I keep stumbling across kits that I can't pick up because my health is already at full. Fortunately, the game throws a lot of splicers at you to offset this veritable bounty of health. Apparently, Andrew Ryan is still alive, as he sends splicers after you for being either a CIA or KGB agent. At this stage, I'm unsure if the message is pre-recorded or live, but Atlas helps to evacuate me away from the 3 whole enemies that Ryan throws at me. The place he evacuates me to is the medical area of Rapture, and just in time, as I'm really in dire need of first aid kits after that brutal escape. Moving into the reception area of the medical pavilion has me picking up a tape recorded by the lady from before who was there when the New Year's attack happened. She does describe it as an attack, and goes on to say that a Dr. Steinman was to patch her up afterwards. Steinman reoccurs later in this area, lauding Andrew Ryan for freeing him from the burdens of morality as a scientist and allowing him to experiment on the human body without restraint. The big new mechanic introduced here is hacking. Hacking a robot or a machine basically has you playing a pipe dream game where your goal is to reveal tiles to get the goop from one end of the pipe system to the exit. I always remembered enjoying this little minigame, though I will say that the mouse sensitivity for this game is god-awful. If I want to play the game without my mouse snapping behind me with a slight nudge, I gotta move the sensitivity down to 1. But doing this causes my menu mouse to move slower than US weed legalization, so I have to increase it to 2 to hack effectively and then bump it back down afterwards. Eventually I just give in to learning how to play at 2 sensitivity, as being unable to pause in a hack menu makes trying to hack a turret in mid-combat excessively stupid. At least, that's what I would say if I didn't have my Logitech gaming software.
Introducing the Logitech gaming software, the software that's useful for making your mouse glow any color you want. You can also adjust your DPI, I guess, but it won't matter because you'll be distracted by all the cool fucking colors your mouse can make. No one knows what any of these buttons do, but by God, I'm sure that—
Anyways, when I finish the hack, I'm now the proud owner of a flying robot that sounds like someone unleashed a horde of bees into a plastic wrap scraping convention. The gunplay in this game leaves a lot to be desired. Not only do the guns feel like they have no weightiness to them whatsoever, but they don't ever really feel all that powerful either. Really, the combat in general is pretty weak, which puts a damper on a lot of the game. I mean, at this stage, most of the combat looks like this. And it makes me really not want to fight too much. The only thing that I think would increase my interest in wanting to fight with this particular combat would be an experience system, but it is what it is. The peculiarity of Andrew Ryan's Funhouse really starts to show itself here, as a tape tells you that anyone who expects anything for free is considered a parasite, including healthcare. This is only furthered by these health stations which cost $14 to patch you up, and that even hacking instantly costs money. What's cool is that these enemies will actually use them in battle if you don't kill them before they make it over to a station, and that stations can be hacked to hurt the enemy instead of healing them, which I like a lot as a mechanic. Also, Steinman went absolutely nuts with the power of Adam. His logs revealed that he was a simple cosmetic surgeon who went from being able to only take care of warts and blemishes to being able to completely sculpt and shape the body and face of humans to whatever he wished them to look like. This caused him to start luring in women with promises of making them beautiful, and then just going to town on their faces with whatever idea popped into his mind, while sculpting his own face in between sessions. He cites Picasso as his inspiration, claiming that the painter got bored of painting humans normally and instead began to use cubes and shapes to represent them. So Steinman decided that he wanted to start trying to apply this cubism to his patients. Well, getting to him for his key has you taking a tour of the Funhouse's take on all things medical. You have the crematorium, which nets you the incinerate plasmid, Dandy Dental, which nets you the telekinesis plasmid, and a couple of bonus tonics which give you additional skills along the way, such as stronger melee attacks with the wrench and regaining health from successful hacking attempts. I have to say, the layout of this area is pretty seamless, although each area is also pretty damn short. It's one of those things where you have to go to the doctor to get the key, but you have to clear the wreckage to the doctor using telekinesis, which can only be accessed after you've gotten the incinerate plasmid. Each little side area takes maybe 5 minutes max, but there are also other parts of the map that are completely skippable if you so choose. As relatively bland as combat can be, the whole area is designed around exploration and keeping your interest sated with different bits of lore about Rapture and how things work around here. While the exploration is pretty fun, the looting system could also definitely use an overhaul. You know how in more modern Bethesda games it'll tell you if a crate is empty before you even open it? Well, that's not the case with Bioshock. Sure, you could say, it's more realistic this way, but it's also 10 times more tedious. Beyond that, you drink and eat every single little consumable item that you pick up. No big deal, right? Well, considering that cigarettes decrease your health and increase your EVE, and alcohol does the opposite, it's a little annoying when you consider that the only thing that you can do upon opening a container is consume all of it. So maybe some bandages which provide a flat heal are combined with cigarettes which also harm your health, and you have no choice but to ignore the stack or take it all, which works against you healing if that's your goal. In addition to this, I'm at a stage in the game where I can only equip 2 offensive plasmids at a time. This means giving up my incinerate or shock for telekinesis, and unfortunately I deemed shock to be more useful for clearing mobs. So now I've missed a fragment of the area due to it being iced over until I find an upgrade station or a gene bank. It's just a little silly is all. Anyways, I confront the good doctor who's gone absolutely insane, his genetic recoding causing him to see visions of Aphrodite commanding him to slice people up to become quote-unquote perfect. After this is my actual first face-to-face encounter with the little sister, and my formal meeting with Tenenbaum. Tenenbaum is someone who I've collected a handful of tapes about, a genius of a scientist who served the Germans presumably back in World War II, when she was 16 years old. She admonished the Germans for being so quick to judge those who they deemed to be too stupid or physically ugly, feeling as if these rejects had a lot of potential in their own ways. She was also the one who created the Little Sisters, viewing them as her children. Atlas implores me to harvest the remaining little sister for as much Atom as possible in order to power me up, while she guarantees to make it worth your while to save them from their altered state and revert them back to the ugly little fable characters that they were always meant to be.
No! 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 No!
Howdy, friend. Heard my little broadcast, did you? Yeah. You look the type.
Well, you can see what route I'm going for here because, hey, the mystery of the science lady is enticing. After my encounter with that thing, a place to spend my newfound fortune conveniently opens up on the other side of the room with a tape from Steinman explaining that the Little Sisters are nearly indestructible from being infused with some sort of sea slug. The slug produces the atom which courses through the Little Sisters and has become symbiotic to a point that it's thought to be impossible to separate them from it without death. After this, I finally get to take on a Big Daddy, which is about as epic as you might expect it to be. Then it's off to Neptune's bounty, where Atlas explains that Andrew Ryan ran Rapture into the ground, but he's unsure why or how. Neptune's bounty is definitely more challenging than the previous area, and I actually wind up biffing it to a large father right at the start. The thing that I really like about Big Daddies besides their names is the fact that they won't really bother you unless you get close to their little sister. And on top of that, some splicers in the area tend to open fire on Big Daddies also, which really helps draw away the fight from yourself. After I managed to take this one down, I received Tenenbaum's gift in the form of 200 Eve, a plasmid, and some armor-piercing rounds. So to break that down, if I were to harvest the sisters, I'd receive 480 Eve for every 3. If I saved them, I gained 440 for every 3, plus a free plasmid and whatever else. I'd say the latter is the better deal, even if I don't get to choose my plasmids. I haven't mentioned this yet, but I think the Circus of Values vending machine might be one of my favorite things in Bioshock just due to how creepy, ridiculous, and funny that they sound.
Welcome to the Circus of Value!
So to get through this area, this crazy dude wants me to get him a type of research camera and use it to take pictures of these crazy spider splicer enemies. This has me trekking through an area littered with cameras, turrets, and assholes. Remember that one time when I was like, boy, I sure do remember liking the Pipe Dream hacking minigame? Yeah, I changed my mind. It was fun at first, but holy fuck. I mean, the alternative is just blasting the shit out of turrets, but it's almost a waste of ammo when I can just hack them and have them take care of any splicers coming my way. The research camera that I retrieve has me taking these Pokemon Snap photos of enemies which get graded and fill a bar at the bottom. Filling the bar gains me a bonus in damage against enemies. I guess I'm 50-50 on this particular mechanic. On one hand, it's a neat way to gain bonus damage, but on the other hand, it's a little tedious to switch to the camera to snap a shot of an enemy before they brain me. Speaking of combat, Neptune's bounty took the easiness of blasting a single enemy or two with no issues and went, yeah, but what if we threw like 3 or 4 or a dozen enemies at you at once? This increases the difficulty tremendously as I go from walking through the area with almost no issues and full health kits to coveting every single kit that I could get my hands on. As weird as it sounds, I think this is probably the most effective way to make this type of combat system more interesting, as I'm now snapping my mouse in every direction to blast whatever is giving me trouble while trying to keep my eye on my health in the top left. The story of this area revolves around Frank Fontaine, the leader of a ring of smugglers who brought in tons of contraband to create a black market empire. Atlas mentions that Fontaine has been dead for a while, and yet everyone still seems to jump at his shadow. Andrew Ryan regarded Fontaine as dangerous, but only so much as to keep his eye on him at first. This allowed Fontaine to begin spreading his empire, investing in atom and plasmids and building houses for the poor so as to recruit them into his splicer army. Eventually, Andrew Ryan found himself constantly working against Fontaine, going so far as to introduce the death penalty to prevent further smuggling of various goods. From the looks of it, these goods contain things like the Holy Bible, whiskey, and weapons from the surface. So basically the Tennessee starter pack. Tenenbaum also mentions needing to rely on Fontaine to procure her research materials, even comparing Fontaine to the Germans in his efficiency. Speaking of, it's also revealed through one of these audio tapes that Little Sisters were created by using daughters from various Rapture residents, as one of the tapes go on about the woman's daughter returning to them with a Big Daddy accompanying her, stabbing at whatever corpses were around from the riots and fighting. This is pretty much the end of Neptune's bounty, barring a few more splicers. One of the mechanics introduced is a weapon upgrade station, which I thought would reward me with bakery fresh cinnamon buns, but instead gave me a weapon upgrade. I don't know what that's about, but I suppose I'll begrudgingly take it. Well, the next area has me running through the hidden chunks of Rapture, which the smugglers from Fontaine's faction used to run their contraband through. Atlas is starting to get old at this stage, as he tends to keep going, "Oh, me family is just around the corner. Oh, it's just so frustrating. Oh, please come help me so I can get to me wife and child." Well, turns out if I had waited for about 5 more minutes of gameplay, the problem would have taken care of itself, as Atlas's loved ones are sitting down in this submarine. Well, Andrew Ryan speaks directly to you, telling you, don't pull that lever. I pull the lever, and the lights kinda go out. Everything short circuits, and I get to watch as splicers start clawing at the submarine. Atlas gets the door open, I boogie down to the submarine, and it just sort of challengers out of existence. Well, I'm glad Atlas couldn't hear me bitch about him talking about his family, because I was starting to doubt that they actually existed, and I was just being strung along. I guess it doesn't exist right now, which means I'm technically still correct. So that's all for Smuggletown. Next up is Arcadia, where Atlas promises to, have you bring justice unto Ryan. Come on, help me out, dude, Jesus. Well, Arcadia at first glance seems to house a plant-strewn area known as the Tea Garden. It's explained that the ghosts I've been seeing are the side effects of the atom coursing through me, causing my DNA to ravel together with previous people. It's bullshit. They just wanted to use ghosts as a device to show things that used to happen in Rapture and decided to write it off as genetic magic. Also, the Tea Garden is some kind of advanced fuck garden, used to lure ladies in on a charming and romantic tour. Neat. The new stuff in this area comes in the form of these disappearing splicers which poof into petals when they're damaged a bit, and also crafting ammos from spare parts found around the area. The crafting doesn't always seem worth the time, but the Houdini splicers add a level of intensity which most other splicers don't, and I like their design a lot. Another tape shines a little more light on how things started to go to hell. Ryan decided to order his men to kill everyone who didn't fight for him, claiming that there were no innocents, only heroes and criminals. The bigger part to Arcadia is all of these trees. With there being no breathable oxygen below the ocean, this hub is essential to keeping the residents of Rapture alive. Well, Ryan decides, yeah, fuck that, let's burn all the trees here, which hinders my progress in getting to him as the area goes on lockdown. So we gotta get to the botanist who invented and planted these types of trees in the first place, who sends you on a fetch quest for a type of rose. This whole quest line completely reverses that feel-good sensation of exploring an area like I did in the medical pavilion. Because here in Arcadia, I explored as much as I could before heading towards the objective like always, only for the objective to tell me to go back the way I just explored. Except now there's new enemies spawning in. It really makes you want to forego exploration until you've taken care of the objective, which kind of sucks for my style of play. Either way, the lady gets killed off by Andrew Ryan, and you figure out that you need a couple more ingredients from a different area in order to save the trees. Sure is fortunate that only the way to Ryan is blocked off due to lack of oxygen. Anyways, onwards to the farmer's market. This area is about what you would expect, and I collect bee syrup and distilled water from around it. One of these tapes tells me how one of Rapture's doctors coerced Ryan into modifying the plasmids to mentally control splicers into working for him, effectively taking away their free will. While Ryan hates the idea of the suggestion, he doesn't ponder on it for too long before giving the go-ahead. Beyond this tidbit, there's not a ton of interesting stuff here. Well, besides the worst enemy of all, bees.
Killing me won't bring back your goddamn honey! Oh, no, not the bees! Not the bees! Ah!
But yeah, I grab my ingredients, craft the thing I need to craft, and scoot out. Well, it's right at about this time that the game goes, oh wait, you have way too many health kits, and sicks a metric fuckload of security bots on me. So I have to sprint through this hell, wind up finding a little sister, try to take on her tremendous papa, only for another one to come flying in also. Needless to say, I get shafted, though an interesting thing to note here is that the fathers then start hitting each other as I go down, which is odd. I guess it really is just one dad per kiddo. Well, the game doesn't relent at all in difficulty at this point, as you're to defend the machine which is helping clear the air out from the toxins which Ryan unleashed. Well, as much as I want to say it's difficult, there's one little thing preventing it from being a true challenge, and that's the Vita chambers. Since there is no true game over at this stage, your death just causes you to respawn in battle at a chamber and then get back to killing. It's interesting because I don't actually hate the system, but it does lower the difficulty tremendously. I guess if I had to start everything over when I died, I'd have struggled a bit in this past section. But at the same time, it's kinda like, oh, well, guess I'll keep fighting. Though if you really do want the challenge of not having Vita chambers, there is an option to turn them off also, so I guess I can't really complain. At any rate, the air gets cleared and I move onward to Fort Frolic, supposedly one stage away from finally confronting Andrew Ryan. Fuck. Yeah, you know we gotta do something here first. Well, the something here consists of doing the bidding of the creepiest character in the game, Sander Cohen. Sander is an artist who creates his art from the death of people, creating wax figures from their live forms in macabre and twisted ways. He relishes in the way that they die, and has you take pictures of their deaths for his display.
Presto, presto! No, no! I'm trying. Please.
Once again, young Fitzpatrick.
Oh God, you sick fuck, let me out of there!
So I may remember.
It's awesomely cruel and I love his character. And Fort Frolic is just as cool, as you go through all of these different artsy areas packed with Cohen's petrified creations. It's creepy and unsettling and it feels very fun to explore the area. There isn't a ton of earth-shattering lore beyond Cohen going slowly insane, but it really doesn't need the extra boost to make it interesting, honestly. After collecting all of the pictures for Cohen's masterpiece, he walks down the stairs and admires the work that you've done. You would think that he would try to kill you, but he simply unlocks a plasmid for you and then sends you on your way. I thought about killing him, but I've decided against it for now. He may be a psychopath, but he's definitely endearing in his own way. Alright, onward to Hephaestus. This is the area that supposedly houses Andrew Ryan, as evidenced by the ridiculous amount of security standing in the way. Atlas has asked me to kindly kill the bastard so that we can hopefully escape this underwater prison. Meanwhile, Ryan taunts me constantly as I encounter bullet sponge after bullet sponge of splicer assholes. This is the first time in the game where I've truly felt like I might run out of ammo and money, and every hackable machine is set to nearly maximum difficulty. My objective is to disable this security and find out exactly how to do so by following the various data logs around the area. Apparently there was a point where even some of Ryan's closest people were doubting his direction, and decided killing him would save Rapture. No one knew if it would work for sure, of course, but what they did know is that Rapture has only spiraled downward towards hell under his guidance. The biggest movement these guys cooked up to get past Ryan's lockdown was to build a bomb to take out one of the generators, which powers the safety measures on the door locking him in. This involves me running through the area, figuring out where the bomb is, going to it, listening to the diary entry to figure out which ingredients the bomb needs, and then backtracking for said ingredients. The biggest issue I have with this idea is the fact that I've seen these little canisters of ionic gel a few times, but I can't pick them up until I figure out what they're for. Which makes sense as a character in a video game because why would they carry it if they don't know what it is? But it makes less sense as a player because this bright tube of blue gel is very obviously something I should be able to pick up, especially when it has a name. But I can't do that until I know that I need it. At least there's plenty of canisters to choose from. The more annoying task here is collecting 4 chunks of Big Daddies which weren't able to be collected before. And I can't tell if the ones that I already killed respawned or if their bodies just disappeared, so I have to kill a couple more to get my parts. Either way, I assemble the bomb and cart it off to the place that it needs to be. Then I set it off and haul ass out. It's a pretty intense escape, and I have to say that it's very fitting for the lead up to Andrew Ryan. So when I make it into Ryan's area, he sets off a self-destruct sequence to take the whole city down, leaving you to try to get to him to reverse the process. You would think this would involve some kind of over-the-top boss fight, some kind of gauntlet of countless enemies clawing at you, but it doesn't. Hephaestus served that purpose, and this area is almost exclusively for storyline purposes. So you make your way up, and here he is, Andrew Ryan. Not surrounded by security, not armed to the teeth, not in some mechanical space marine suit, just him and his golf putter, practicing some swings. This is the twist that everyone remembers if they played this game. You were born here not too long ago. You're maybe 2 years old or so, born through experimentation and controlled through a single mind control phrase. Would you kindly?
Would you kindly? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that? Would you
Kill! Massachusetts! Or slay! Obey!
I mean, think about it. What reason does an average survivor of a plane crash have to obey without question the word of Atlas? What reason does that person have to constantly risk their life? To plunge a plasmid into their arm without question or direction? It does what a lot of games don't do, and gives your nameless, voiceless character a story. Many games which have you jumping through levels like Bioshock does tend to give you a reason for your character doing what they do in an instruction manual or some kind of introduction sequence. A lot of the time, there didn't need to be a why to your character's actions beyond the player's curiosity. Bioshock takes the player's curiosity and plies it with a grand overarching theme that I would assume the majority of players would never have noticed leading up to this moment. It is wonderful, but it does have a few flaws. There's a pretty stupid thing which the devs decided to do when telling their infamous plot twist in my eyes. They revealed it before they reveal it. As you stumble through the ventilation system on your way to Ryan, you come across a room with the words "Would you kindly" painted on a board with a bunch of pictures. An audio log reveals one of the main doctors in the game performing the mind control test on you when you were a lot smaller by having you snap the neck of a puppy which you loved. It's a terrible and brutal thing, but the impact of it dampens the upcoming twist. I suppose if you hadn't had it in your mind that Atlas has used the phrase "would you kindly" when regarding you quite a lot, you might just think this was another one of Dr. Suchong's wacky experiments. But you go from a very minor percentage of people who may catch on to this plot twist before it's revealed to a considerably larger percentage. I just feel like this room could have easily been revealed after this scene. Additionally, there's a more minor point from way earlier in the game which now sticks out to me. So Atlas walks you through your first encounter with a little sister, imploring you to harvest her for the maximum amount of atoms so that he can continue to use you. What makes no sense is the fact that if this was something he truly wanted, all he needed to do was kindly ask you to harvest her. Again, smaller point, but still valid in my eyes. Either way, I still really love this plot point, and I think it takes the game to a new height of greatness, going from a pretty good horror-themed game to a very good one with a great story to tell. So after this, Atlas asks you to kindly take the key from Andrew Ryan's body and use it to stop the self-destruct sequence. Well, as you may have guessed, Atlas hasn't been controlling you because he's a great guy. He's been controlling you because he is Frank Fontaine, and he gives you the old Ganon laugh for being so naive. Now that he's finally won his age-old battle with Ryan, he no longer needs you, and decides the best way to kill you is to send 2 whole security drones after you. Nice. A little sister leads you to safety to a place where Tenenbaum is, and she explains that she basically created you and has now undone some of the mind control which Fontaine has over you. I can only assume now that Ryan hated my existence so much because I had no free will, the primary tenet on which this place was built under. But it also calls into question why he referred to you at first as a possible CIA or KGB agent. I suppose it's possible that he honestly had no idea about the plane crash or who you were, but figured it out later. Either way, my objective is to now figure out a way to fully earn back my freedom from Fontaine's control. Well, Fontaine's not going to go without a fight, as he first tells me to kindly get stepped on by a giant dad. Well, that doesn't work, so he settles for having my brain tell my heart to stop beating, which lowers my maximum health. The last sprint through these levels is absolute insanity, as I actually do wind up running out of heals, ammo, and money, and I find myself playing in ways which I haven't throughout the entire game. It's very Doom-like in the way that I swap to whatever weapon has ammo and I use whatever I can to make my enemies die. I slip into Sander Cohen's room and piss him off by killing his dancing couple. He comes down and I kill him in his room instead, which was kinda cool. Then I get to the potion which is supposed to free me from Fontaine. Well, it frees me a little bit as my health restores back to what it was, but I also now have no control over my plasmids. This means that every minute or so my body freaks out and I get any random plasmid from the game. This only takes the Doom levels to new heights, as I'm now discovering the usefulness of stuff like Enrage, Target Dummy, and even Cyclone Trap. I think the main takeaway that I got from this Wheel of Fortune type style of gameplay is the fact that switching plasmids in this game is more of a chore than just sticking to one. They all tend to accomplish the same thing with a few exceptions, and me having a random one is almost as useful as me sticking to one or two like I have been the entire game. I guess I hadn't realized that until the game forced me to use something random. Anyways, I know I haven't gone into great detail about Dr. Suchong, but the guy was a monster with no ethics. He didn't care about his subjects' feelings or if something hurt them, he only wanted results. Which is why the way that he died is extraordinarily satisfactory. Basically, he was having issues getting the Grande Papas to imprint on these small girls, and was trying to figure it out while one of the sisters was badgering him over and over. Well, he either shoved or hit the girl, and that was the trigger which finally got the daddy to flip out, killing him on the spot. Awesome. Well, I finally get my shit together and make it over to the second to last level where Fontaine is roided out of his mind. He's like throwing pillars around and giant statues and shit, and then he decides, yeah, I should probably run away. This is probably the most awkward display of power I think I've ever witnessed. Well, to make up for Ryan's stage not having all of the crazy shit that you'd expect, Fontaine's stage does. The goal here is to become a Big Daddy, so that a little sister will get this door open for me so I can get to Fontaine. You get to hear a lot from Tenenbaum at this point, which is, I don't know. She started off as having a pretty noticeable German accent, but it's like they went, oh shit, it's the end of the game, and this bitch is just not German enough. She's hardly spoken any German words or phrases at me until now, and then suddenly it's like, hey, look at me, I am little German girl, das ist gut, sehr gut, scheiße, und you are making Big Daddy now. It's just really bizarre, but alright. So you drudge through this hefty patriarch facility, picking up the stench of the sea and dumping it on your supple body, tossing on a suit of underwater diving gear, splitting open your vocal cords to make them deep as fuck, and figuring out the best way to attract a little girl to you. Regular, normal, not weird at all shit. The worst part about this entire trek is Fontaine, and not in the way where it's like, oh, he's shutting down doors and sending in flying death turrets and taking away your ammo stations. No, he just doesn't shut the hell up. Like, I get that they're really building him up, but it's not like he's saying anything particularly prolific. Most of what he says is the same old recycled shit over and over.
You push me too far, kid. You're playing a bad hand, kid. You're just too spliced to smell it. Look around you. There's nothing to save. Shame things turned out this way, kid. Look around you, kid. I'd turn tail if I were you, kid. I got rapture now.
It's just annoying at this point, and really the phrase less is more springs to mind. If I wanted to hear someone say the same shit repeatedly, I'd watch one of my videos. At any rate, I suit up and grab one of the girls, and I move on to being arguably the best Big Daddy in the entire game. Of course, I wouldn't be one without the addition of every single person in the world's favorite type of quest.
Escort missions.
You know what my favorite part about this escort mission is? The fact that this game drills it into your head over and over again that little sisters are essentially immortal due to their genes being so altered. Then they give me this lame, normal-ass girl to walk me around. What's even funnier is that this happens this way even when you harvest all of the little sisters. But you know what the best part about this mission is?
Hurry, Mr. B. Hurry, Mr. B. Hurry, Mr. B. Hurry, Mr. B. Hurry.
I'm hurrying.
Mr. Bubbles. Hurry, Mr.
I'm
B.
hurrying.
Hurry, Mr. B. Hurry.
Oh god, not you too. Anyways, so I make it to Fontaine who he's this now.
And this is to go even further beyond.
He looks like the fucking Greek god Atlas, or Dr. Manhattan, which is kinda cool actually. But the boss fight is... Remember that one and only time that I fought a Big Daddy?
Do not fire! Do not fade! Hold on! Fire!
I guess it's a little more epic in a way, kind of like a colossal grandpa fight instead. But the most difficult part of the fight is these flying buzz machines and splicers that join him, which really isn't even that bad either. Anyways, he goes down and gets the stabbo from all of these tiny chicks. The game's ending plays out differently depending on if you harvested a few sisters, all of them, or none of them, which is an okay touch, but it also makes me wish the gameplay itself changed a bit if you harvested. Either way, the ending scene is actually kind of cute. The girls grow up like normal, going to college, getting married, having kids, and surrounding your deathbed, which is actually very touching in a way. I guess it's just kind of weird when you really think about it, because I'm sure something happened like, "Hey girl, since we've been together for a few months, tell me about your childhood." And the girl goes, Yeah, it was pretty normal, I guess. And the weirdest part about the game's ending is the total lack of credits. It just throws you back into the main menu. Might be a Steam thing, I don't know. Bioshock is still as unique as I remember it being. It mixes the genre of horror and first-person shooter extremely effectively, and I have to say that it really flew by for me. While I was a little iffy on the combat at first, I overall think that it could have been worse. The game keeps you in the action as much as it can without being too easy, and it does a pretty good job at throwing new things at you for a while before letting you play your way. It's not all good, obviously. The combat does get repetitive, and a lot of the objectives really make you feel less inclined to explore until you've finished them. The story twist was fantastic, and I'd argue the story itself is probably the best part about the game. Though even then, a few of the characters tend to grate on you, and there are a few plot holes which are hard to explain. If the game was, 3 hours longer, I'd have been significantly less amused unless they threw in some more Sander Cohen types into the game. All in all, I had a lot of fun. Was the game as good as I remember? Yeah, it was right about as good as I remember it being. A bit dated, but still good. I'd love to see another game that gives us a look at that gritty, alternate reality type of story in a more modern style. I'd say it isn't impossible at all seeing what Prey gave us, but I guess we'll see. Thanks for watching. I actually have a sponsor for this video in the form of Surfshark VPN, which is fantastic timing considering I'm in Germany now because let me tell you, Europe gets shafted when it comes to game deals. And I have an addiction when it comes to buying games on sale that I don't actually have time to play. So yeah, easy solution here. With Surfshark, all I gotta do is use the app on my phone or browser extension on my PC, and now I'm in America buying games. Wait, I don't need air quotes for the second one. Plus I've been watching HBO for a bit now running through Boardwalk Empire, and that doesn't work at all in Europe. And Netflix libraries are different from country to country, so it all kind of adds up to a necessity for someone like me. Then on top of all of that, Surfshark's encryption offers an extra layer of privacy and protection while online, which helps me feel a lot better about browsing not safe for the weather on public unsecured Wi-Fi networks. So if you want to get in on this action and help out the channel at the same time, use my code SALTFACTORY to grab an 85% off discount plus 3 months free on top of that. And if you don't like it, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's not much to lose in giving it a try for yourself. Check out my link in the description for more info. Alright, time for me to plug my really awesome, definitely unique in every single way social links. Twitch, yes, a place for people who enjoy playing music in the background of their streams with no fear of copyright law. Twitter, a place where my videos get posted and sometimes recipes for good food. Discord, a place where people of science gather, bound together by a firm code of law and friendship. Holy shit, none of these are accurate at all. Oh, and Patreon. And that's it, I think. Have a good one.